Patch 12.9 has arrived, and that means we're back again with a brand new edition of the best solo carries. 3 champions for each role who are godlike picks for the current state of the meta. Now, you've probably wondered to yourself, is SkillCapped really worth it? Well, let's find out. What rank were you before you started SkillCapped?
So I was bronze, but I think I was working my way back down to iron.
May have been high silver, but I think I was gold.
And what's the highest rank you've achieved with SkillCapped?
I've got several accounts I've hit gold on.
Diamond 2.
Is there anything SkillCapped helped you learn that would have taken you longer without it?
If I keep track of where that enemy jungler is, he's on the other side of the map, and it looks like he's ganking by bot lane, and I'm on the top side of the map. I can't get there in time, so there's no way I can impact that. I'm going to go seal his topside camps, or I'm going to grab Rift now.
Just lots of ideas like, hey, I'm strong early, I'm Lee Sin, let's analyze all the lane matchups and go to a lane where I have Prio and Invade. That's not something I would be doing on my own every game, but that is something I'm doing because of SkillCapped.
When I played League before SkillCapped, I was sort of playing and feeling my way around. And then after coming across SkillCapped and trying it for a little while, during one of the videos, I think, a sudden click of, hold on a second, this is not just a game of running around and killing people. This is a game about strategy. This is a game about moving the pieces so that the future becomes predictable and then acting on that future.
So what are you waiting for? Get real results at skillcapped.com, link in the description below. Starting off in the top lane, the Monkey King has made a statement due to his recent buffs and is a phenomenal top and jungle pick. Top Wu in specific is a monster pickup into the majority of AD bruisers, and we're seeing a whole lot of them for 12.9. Wu can obliterate Aatrox and Darius, who are highly contested picks in meta. Wukong thrives when he's able to set up massive flank plays and get in behind enemies' lines, so the W buff was insane. Being able to hop over walls opens up countless amounts of opportunities for Wukong, so it's a big factor in his rise. Mord is arguably Wukong's best ban at the moment, since he's seen a spike in play rate and Wu struggles more into AP champs. Wukong is one of those champions who has the luxury of abusing Death's Dance and Maw. Divine Sundra Rush into DD second and Maw third is such a broken core right now. The mix of durability, damage, and ability haste is super nuts. For runes, you'll grab Conqueror with Triumph, Alacrity, and Last Stand. Optimal secondaries include Second Wind and Unflinching. A top laner who has become incredibly stronger simply due to indirect changes in recent patches is Kayle. Kayle feasts into the most played top laners, being Gangplank, Sion, Darius, and Garen. Kayle wants to survive the early levels. Her kill threat is mediocre at best throughout the laning phase, so playing into less mobile champions who can't punish her as hard is what she wants. Kayle struggles against highly mobile tops like Aurelia, Riven, and Yone, but luckily for her, they're played way less often right now. As long as you ban one of those 3, the likelihood of a favorable matchup is great. One of the worst feelings in solo queue is when you're first pick in draft and then your team proceeds to lock full AD or AP, but that's never an issue for Kayle. Lots of amazing options in regards to Kayle's build, as you can run AP or AD to great success. The standard AP build is a Nashor's Rush followed by Riftmaker second and Rabadon's third. AD build consists of Kraken into Wit's End second and Cyrilda's Grudge third. Lethal Tempo and PTA both work for the Keystone. If you want to be taking shorter trades, PTA is more optimal, but in extended fights, Lethal Tempo is super effective. Be sure to run Conditioning and Overgrowth in secondaries to amplify scaling power to the max. To complete the top lane trifecta, we have the Hand of Noxus rounding it out. Give Darius an inch and he'll take a mile, as the early kill power with Ghost cannot be disrespected. If you can manage to hit the level 2 jump on the enemy, popping Ghost and running them down can straight up win you the lane 2 minutes in. The amount of pressure you can draw by netting an early lead forces the enemy into a super tough decision. If they come top, you pop Ghost, kite them around, and rack up a double kill. If left alone, you're going to solo kill the enemy over and over again and leave the enemy's base in shambles. Since Hullbreaker is nerfed for 12.9, it's going to be Trinity or Stride Rush for most games. Trinity into melee opponents and Stride into ranged or champs you have a more difficult time sticking onto. Darius can abuse the Death's Dance Maw combo, but Deadman's Plate is generally the better third option, especially when against heavier AD. Conqueror is the Keystone with Triumph, Alacrity, and Last Stand. Bone Plating and Unflinching are the best secondaries. A jungler on the rise in recent patches and a very underrated pick is Fiddlesticks. Fiddle saw a little buff to his W healing in 12.8, and with Rengar nerfed this patch, Fid will be taking over his spot in the top 3. There aren't a ton of super strong early game junglers being played in meta, which gives Fiddle even more value as he's a jungler who really comes online at level 6. Just the threat of a Fiddle ult at level 6 forces the enemy team to play much more reserved, as the gank paths you can take are so versatile. Setting up in Fog of War before objective spawn or when pressuring towers will determine how successful you are on Fiddle. Catching the entire enemy team when they walk into choke points is absolutely game-changing. Pay attention to objective timers and set up around them well before they spawn for optimal results. The best Fiddle build is a Rocket Belt Rush into Zanya 2nd and Shadow Flame or Void Staff 3rd. Most players are sleeping on First Strike as Fiddle's keystone. Whenever you dive in for ult plays, the amount of gold you can stack off of First Strike throughout the game is really nice. Volibear has really emerged as the godlike jungle pick in recent patches. His rather simplistic kit, tanky build, coupled with respectable damage and strong engage power, add up to make Volley a very consistent solo queue jungler. Volley is currently winning at unheard of rates into the most played junglers, being Diana, Lee Sin, and Viego. Over a 54% win rate against all 3. The Chemtank active in combination with Volley ult and Q give him such reliable access onto his targets. This makes punishing positional errors extremely easy compared to the majority of junglers. Half the time, solo queue just comes down to which team can find the first pick on a player who's out of position, and Volley does a great job of making that happen. Build is a Chemtank Rush, followed by Deadman's Plate 2nd and Force of Nature 3rd. For runes, grab Press the Attack with Triumph, Tenacity, and Last Stand. Celerity and Water Walking work best for secondaries. Another really strong engaged jungler who takes home the 3rd solo carry slot is Nocturne. Nock is absolutely loving the fact that these spam gank junglers like Hecarim, Shinzao, Gragas, and Nunu are nowhere to be seen in the solo queue meta. You have a much less stressful time hard farming to level 6 and being able to take over games from then on out. A really good strategy to exercise with Nock once you reach the mid game is always hovering the side of the map where your fed members are. Say for example, you've got a Darius who's popping off. Sit within ult range of him and use it when the enemy jungler ganks to turn the 2v2. It's often better you let the enemy force onto your team and then counter with ultimate instead of diving in too aggressively yourself. Nock is another fighter champion who can take full advantage of Death's Dance and Maw in their broken state. You have plenty of damage to dive the backline and annihilate squishies while taking minimal damage in return. Runes are Conqueror with Triumph Alacrity and Coup de Grace. Eyeball Collector and Ultimate Hunter are the best secondaries. With Ahri finally moving down in 12.9, it gives room for the recently buffed Vladimir to crack the top 3. Vlad is such a great answer to many of the highly contested melee mids that we see in solo queue. The armor buff allows him to thrive even more in the Yasuo and Yone matchups. The fact it was Vlad's base armor that was increased is amazing because the first few levels are where he can be exploited the most. It's now easier to get past the early game and AD matchups, scale into your level 9 spike where you get Q maxed out and begin steamrolling through everyone. Mal's and Anivia are 2 of Vlad's most annoying matchups, but they aren't played very often at all right now. With Kassadin buffed in 12.8 and being played a little more, it's one of the better value bans when picking Vlad. Standard build for Vlad is a Rocket Belt Rush, followed by Cosmic Drive 2nd and Rabadon's 3rd. There really isn't a number 1 keystone for Vlad right now, as Phase Rush, Electrocute, Airy, and Predator are all performing well. Phase and Predator are best value when against ranged opponents, whereas Electrocute and Airy are most optimal in melee lanes. A mid laner that Faker has been seeing a ton of success with in solo queue, and one that more players need to be abusing right now, is Pantheon. The buffs from a few patches back have been amazing for Panth, and he's a premier solo queue mid. Panth is incredibly consistent as his point and click stun from W provides guaranteed CC to set up ganks or simply win free trades. Now that Pantheon E no longer slows when moving backwards, taking short trades and backing away is nearly impossible for the enemy to counter. Chunk the enemy out a couple times with the W-Q-E combo, and once they're in lethal, flash W for the easy solo kill. Tired of your bot lane feeding before you can arrive to make an impact? Pantheon ult allows him to counter plays exceptionally well, and let's be real here, nobody respects the ult presence, especially in the lower ranks. Longer range mids are the most difficult for Panth, so Lux or Xerath are good bans to consider. Eclipse into Ghostblade and Death's Dance is the more offensive path build, but if you prefer some added durability, a Black Cleaver can be slotted in. Runes are Conqueror or Press the Attack, depending on whether you value extended skirmish power of Conk or the upfront burst damage of PTA. It's gotta be years since we've seen solo lane Swain in a powerful spot, but we can finally say that has changed in 12.9. The mini rework combined with a couple of added hotfix buffs have propelled Swain into a very sleeper yet strong mid lane position. Early on in lane, it's all about survival, especially against highly mobile champs like Cat or Fizz. Cat is one of the best bans for Swain, as she's picked quite a bit and can very easily dodge out on your E. Once you get level 6, it becomes an entirely different game, as Swain Ultimate is where so much of his power lies. With Leandria's and Zhonya's, you become a super tanky, consistent damage mage who thrives in extended fights. Conqueror is going to be the best keystone for most games, however, when the enemy comp has a lot of skill shot oriented champs, running Phase Rush is a great idea. It was a little odd to see Jhin buffed last patch, as he was already in a good spot, but he's now a top 3 ADC in 12.9. It's really great to see some versatility coming back to Jhin's builds, as lethality is popping up more and more each patch. It's over in Korea where an Umbral Glaive Rush is becoming extremely popular and adds a new twist to the champ. Gale Force is still 100% viable, and if that's what you prefer, by all means, but in games where the enemy comp is full squishy, running lethality has become more optimal. The core is super cheap, allowing you to hit a mid-game spike really fast and play off your team's catch plays even better with stronger ult damage. Fleet is going to be best when playing the crit build, whereas Dark Harvest slots in with lethality. Lucian has held down the number 1 ADC spot for multiple patches, and that won't change for 12.9. Lucian is extremely oppressive when paired with Nami or Yuumi, and both champs are highly contested in meta. You're able to play hyper aggressive and can punish the enemy super hard when they waste spells. On Mythic completion, paired with a Nami who has Mandate, your ability to one-shot the enemy ADC should not be legal. Core build for Lucian should evolve based on the game in hand. Kraken against lots of tanks or bruisers, and Gale Force into squishies or skill shot reliant comps. Essence Reaver and Infinity Edge are great second and third purchases. The most popular rune page is PTA with Inspiration secondary. However, when you're paired with Nami or any support you feel confident in netting early kills with, run Domination secondary instead. Twitch is by far the most undervalued ADC for the current solo queue meta. Everything Twitch wants in a support meta is exactly what we have in 12.9. Lulu, Yuumi, Nami, Karma, and Soraka are all being prioritized at high rates, which amplifies Twitch's carry power significantly. Hit 2 core items with an enchanter buffing you up in team fights, and the ability to 1v5 with Twitch is real. Majority of ADCs cannot start fights on their own or make game-winning pick plays, but Twitch's stealth factor gives him an alternative way to carry. Team fighting is great and all, but if you can find a pick before an objective and give your team the 5v4, it makes everything so much easier. Kraken, Gale Force, and Blade are all viable rush items for Twitch. If you're with an enchanter, going more offensive with Kraken is great, whereas a Blade or Gale Force helps you be more self-sufficient if your support lacks peel power. Standard rune pages, Lethal Tempo with Presence of Mind, Alacrity, and Cut Down. Taste of Blood and Ultimate Hunter work great for secondaries. With Renata Glask nerfed in 12.9, Senna becomes a serious contender for the number 1 solo queue support. Senna is one of the few supports who can pack a serious punch in the damage department while still offering some nice utility for her carries. As more and more players begin to abuse the Umbral Glaive Rush, Senna's win rate keeps on climbing. Eclipse is viable as a rush as well, it just depends on how the lane is shaping out. If you're hard smashing and are going to knock down the enemy tower very early on, then rushing Umbral will help to extend that lead and control vision when you rotate around the map. Rune page for Senna is Fleet Footwork with Presence of Mind, Alacrity, and Cut Down. Optimal secondaries include Biscuits and Approach Velocity. Quietly making his way into a top tier position for 12.9 is the artillery sniper Xerath. The 12.8 E buff has been much more impactful than anticipated and has led to a full 2% bump in Xerath's overall win rate. With Senna being played a ton, Xerath is one of the few supports who sees positive results in the matchup. The long range allows him to keep a nice distance and never allow for Senna to get any poke off with Q. Less hard engaged supports in meta like Thresh and Leona, but more long range ADCs like Jhin and MF suits Xerath extremely well. The Jhin Xerath duo is eclipsing a 54% win rate right now, which is even higher than Lucian and Nami. Jhin being picked in over 20% of games makes Xerath an exceptional support to have available. Xerath build is a Luden's Rush into Horizon Focus second and Zhonya's third. If you need some healing reduction, just grab an Oblivion Orb, but don't complete Morello's. First Strike is Xerath's keystone with Freeboots, Biscuits, and Cosmic Insight. Mana Flow and Scorch are optimal secondaries. Despite the nerfs in 12.8, Soraka continues to heavily outperform 95% of solo queue supports. Soraka just doesn't have an exploitable weakness, as her laning phase is surprisingly powerful, and she only becomes stronger the longer the game goes. Consistent poke from Q and the ability to perma-win trades with W heal is amazing. A big factor to Soraka's strength is how easy it is to be consistently effective. It takes zero skill to point and click with W and ultimate in late game fights, yet the value you get out of those abilities is insanely high. Moonstone or Shurelya's are viable mythics for Soraka, and you should be swapping them around depending on the game. Does the enemy comp have heavy dive? Roll with Shurelya's. Otherwise, Moonstone is a great pickup. Guardian should be prioritized in matchups where the enemies have strong engage power, and in easier lanes where you're in little threat of being bursted out quickly, run Summon Airy. Alright guys, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little more about SkillCapped. So, we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee, and think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's like a gym membership guaranteeing you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered that, right? Not us. We've offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well, in fact, that we're able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium league guides on the internet. We add over 20 videos a week, with over 1,600 guides curated into over 100 courses no one can compare. We've also sent challenger players into ELO Hell 714 times and counting, where they commentate how to carry live. They also respond to all questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $6.99 a month if you are serious about improving. And with all that being said, good luck out there this patch, and we will catch you in the next one.